Born in 1884, Isoroku Yamamoto was the greatest commander of the Japanese Navy. In 1904, Yamamoto graduated from the Japanese Naval Academy. While serving on a ship fighting in the Russo-Japanese War, he lost 2 fingers. Now, with only 8 fingers, Yamamoto got the nickname 80 sen, since manicures cost 10 sen a finger. As his career continued, he went to Harvard to study English. Yamamoto continued to learn about America as he returned to Washington on tour. Afterwards, he was promoted to commander and later admiral. As tensions rose between America and Japan, Yamamoto wisely opposed war with the US. However, when war was decided on, he knew that Japan's best chance would be a massive surprise attack. As such, Yamamoto meticulously planned and executed the attack on Pearl Harbor. He continued as Japan's foremost admiral and played an essential role in the war. In 1943, the Americans intercepted his flight plan for an inspection intended to boost morale. Yamamoto died when his plane was shot down. Oahu Island, December 7th, 1941. The attack on Pearl Harbor has begun. Decoded Japanese messages warned of such an attack, but the US was unsure of where it would occur. Nobody was prepared for what was to come. Orchestrated by Isoroku Yamamoto, the attack on the Hawaiian naval base was a startling 2,000 miles from the US mainland. Torpedoes were launched, bombs were dropped, and bullets filled the air. The unprepared and relatively defenseless fleet was decimated. About 2/3 of the airplanes were destroyed, several cruisers and battleships were destroyed, and thousands of people were killed. Meanwhile, the Japanese suffered minimal casualties, a definitive victory. However, there were 2 silver linings for the US. The first being that the aircraft carriers in the fleet, arguably the most important ships, were not at the base during the attack. Secondly, the valuable oil and repair facilities on the base were intact. After this stunning attack, America would become completely involved in the war. As the Japanese pushed dangerously close to Australia, the Allies tried their hardest to repel them. This culminated in the Battle of Coral Sea. Rather than fight directly, ships launched fighter planes from aircraft carriers, which would do most of the fighting. This strategy was used by both sides to great effect. Despite taking heavy casualties, the Allies won the battle. For the first time, the Allies managed to halt the unrelenting Japanese Navy. Now, Admiral Yamamoto was heading to attack an important base at Midway. His plan was to attack Midway from air, land, and sea, and to draw the Pacific Fleet out in order to crush them. This plan may have worked if it were not for US codebreakers that were able to warn the fleet about the attack. The Battle of Midway began with an unsuccessful bombing of a part of the Japanese fleet. Then, over 100 Japanese warplanes attacked Midway, but failed to significantly damage the base. Before another attack could be ordered, the US forces struck back at the Japanese fleet, but also failed to inflict serious damage. As the fighting continued, American bombers took out all 4 Japanese carriers one by one, destroying many planes that were on the decks in the process. After the intense fighting, Yamamoto's broken fleet was forced to retreat. This battle was a turning point for the Pacific conflict. After the victory at Midway, the Allies needed to go on the offensive. Douglas MacArthur, a general who had fought in World War I, had a strategy. Rather than take every Japanese island, some of which were heavily fortified strongholds, he planned to have the Navy island hop between the weaker islands. This allowed the fleet to inch closer to Japan while also cutting off Japanese fleets from supplies. This was a brilliant strategy, and with it, MacArthur and the fleet would be able to take back the land that they had once defended. On the island of Guadalcanal, the Japanese were building another airbase that would soon become another stronghold. On August 7, 1942, America and Australia launched their surprise attacks on Guadalcanal during the construction of the base. The largest attack by the Allies so far, thousands of Marines stormed the island. Despite taking the base with relative ease, the battle was far, far from over. Both sides sent thousands of troops to fight and die on the strategically important island. Finally, after 6 months of brutal fighting, and losing 2/3 of their 36,000 men, the Japanese forces withdrew. The island was now known as the Island of Death, or even just Hell. With this key point taken by 1943, the war was heavily in favor of America.